We can do that now. We're actually live and in person. Yes, indeed. Is anybody sick and tired of death by PowerPoint? Anybody at 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 15? Okay. Me too. Me too. We don't have any slides to show you today. Okay? What we want for you to help us with is interact with us. My name is Tim Burkhardt. I've been with VMware, now with Broadcom, but I've been with 10 years. I officially had my 9-year anniversary, but I worked with NSX for a couple years before them, when it was called NSX, just for the record. And I'm really happy to be here, but mostly I'm happy to be spending time with my friend and colleague, Joel West. My friend and colleague, Joel West, will introduce himself when I stop talking, but I have a tendency to get very verbose. So what we're going to do, I'll tell you what we're going to do after. There's a plan. Look at the man with the microphone. Yeah, absolutely, because we've had to repeat all of your questions. So, this is Joel West. Joel West, tell them who you are.
Well, my name is Joel West, obviously. I've been working with VMware Technologies about 14 years. Was with Cisco 10 years before that. And Tim and I both work on VCF, courses, recording videos, things like that. So we wanted to do something a little different for this session. He'll tell you what it is. You guys are under some pressure. We did this yesterday, and we had a really good interaction in groups. So you guys got to step it up here. But Tim will explain what we're going to do, and then we'll go.
Well, you see this thing he's carrying around? See, Mr. Joel West, we call him Mr. Full Stack, because he does. He's got head to toe. He's got it all. But we also call him the whiteboard wizard. And coming from me, that's really saying something, right? So he's the whiteboard wizard. And we will solicit. You didn't know you were going to have to do this, but we're soliciting your questions, anything related to VCF. And if it's networking, I might be able to answer. If it's anything else, I turn it over to Joel, and he'll draw it out and explain it to you in no uncertain terms. Fair enough? Fair enough? Y'all got it? All right. Who's going to be the first to say, I got a question? This is top of my mind. I really want to know. What? What do you really want to know about VCF? There's one. Okay. Oh, look at it. Man, talk about Johnny on the spot with hustling. Pot it up. Pot it up.
All right. I had a question about the lifecycle management. I know that there's asynchronous patching for like the VCF part of the stack, but I did not hear whether or not the ARIA or the VCF operations, all that other stuff, if there is asynchronous patching for those as part of the SDC manager.
Yeah, so there's a quick answer to that. There's always like a minimum, like one of the things that we have to deal with, and if anybody has questions about import or standing things up, we'll talk about that. The lifecycle management goes hierarchically from top to bottom. So there is within whatever the BOM is or whatever support in that particular version, there is ways to handle asynchronous patching. Yeah.
Including ARIA operations. What about ARIA Lifecycle Manager?
We got Brian. Yeah.
I was going to ask Brian because he's right in the front row.
Our other colleague works on all things ARIA, but yeah. And what I think what we're going to see too, obviously, if you've been working with VMware products, you're going to have 3 lifecycle managers at this point. That's going to condense to where we unify that, and that's part of what will happen when we go to 9. Yeah, which if I have sort of, because what happens now is one lifecycle management kind of calls another lifecycle manager to do a process, and we'll streamline that and have better visibility. That's part of the why some of the asynchronous stuff is a little compartmentalized, because one update manager is actually doing a process. We have to be careful about not getting everything sideways.
We really do have a simplification model in the works. I mean, we are trying very hard to simplify for you so that you can make a single point of entry for all of your lifecycle management. Good question.
Yeah. Does
I'd
anybody
reward you, but I don't have any rewards to give out today.
does anybody have VCF in production? Okay. So if you got any questions around that too, but if there's a lot of people here that don't, so if we have some basic questions around how, what workload domains are about, why you would choose multiple workload domains, what are some methodology around it? We can talk about that too.
Susie raised his hand. Joel looked the other way. I don't. Does he know you? I'm not. Okay. Test 1, 2.
Test 1, 2. Okay.
There you go.
So we're integrated Windows, or we're all of our vCenters are currently 80 joined, right?
Mhm.
We want to go from the 80 joined vCenters with the SCDC manager using VIDM into the Azure SSO. Is there a migration path for that, or is it complete like rebuild?
There with 5.2, have you looked at the 5.2 new features? So with 5.2, there is a migration path for that.
Okay.
So moving forward, I think we'll continue with that. So you asked a good question. So let me kind of do a little something else. This gets into
The wizard.
this gets into a question we get a lot of times about. Since there's a few people here maybe that don't know a lot about this, you have, when you start off with VCF, right, you create the management domain. There's one management domain per VCF instance, but there are a potential number of workload domains that you might have. The cap for until the last couple of versions was 14. The reason for that was that all the vCenters here, because you have you always have a dedicated vCenter for each workload domain. So I've got vCenters all the way down. Those are in enhanced link mode. So I'm hitting the cap of what's happening with vCenter. But now with 5.2, if you have separate single sign-on domains, you can exceed that number because we're getting around the limitation we have with vCenter. So around identity management, what kind of provider am I using? That it continues to mature. So not only migration path, but also too, so this is 14. Do it this way. This is if I do one SSO. I've got a limit of 14 workload domains. Now, as far as workload domains, I can have clusters within workload domains. It can have up to 64 nodes. So, how many workload domains I might be on load. It might be different architectures. We can talk a little bit about that too if people have questions about workload domains. But if I do separate single sign-on architectures, you can have up to 24 total. Now, you can never exceed 14 in one SSO because we still have that cap. But it allows you in environments where you have multiple or different SSOs to really kind of further compartmentalize that. So we've taken that workload domain and almost decoupled it a little bit from management as far as we can have a lot more flexibility with that. Part of that also happened with the import, right? Because I can import something now that is not vSAN. I can import things that are fiber channel storage or NFS. So getting more flexibility around the workload domain is also another huge effort that we're making. Some things are available now in 5.2, but we'll continue that as we move on to 9.0. Yeah.
Understand that. I understood that the management domain could actually use NFS now. Is that, did I hear that
on
correct?
import?
On import.
If you're doing
On import.
if you're doing a bring up, it's still got to be vSAN. Yeah. What's that?
Workload domains are all fine on NFS?
Yeah, you workload domains? Yeah, they can use NFS.
Yeah.
When we're configuring the workload domains on Bring Up, because of our networking, we only have two NICs per host, right? So for the NFS storage, we're doing static routes to the filers to do export policies on the VM kernel port.
Mm-hmm.
That's not currently configurable. It's like a day 2 operations after we do the deployment. Yeah. So we have to set it up to kind of configure to local storage first. And then is that?
When you're preparing, so let's say I wanted to use NFS. Let's say that I was bringing up a new workload domain and I have 4 nodes. Part of the pre-check is it checks, can I communicate?
Yeah.
So you have to have some kind of kernel port for that to start off with. You can now change things later if you went to, but you have to have that initial communication. It will not instantiate the host if I can't talk to whatever the storage is. Yeah.
Okay. Very good question. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And how about that? Did you see what he did? He passed the mic. Awesomeness.
May not be a good thing, but so we're not doing VCF yet. And part of what I'm here to try to figure out is brownfield migrations and whatnot.
Okay.
And so I don't know limitation counts, but what I understood and I kind of commented this gentleman about was on, you said 14 vCenters is the limitation. I've got like 30 already. So I'm saying outside of management for the workload domains, I know I can have multiple clusters and fine. That's Tim, you know USAA, so you understand how we were doing it before. We got like 30 different vCenters, but if there's a maximum of only 14, if I'm understanding correctly, for the workload domains, is that going to change in a?
You would just have multiple VCF instances.
I'm sorry.
At this point, you would have multiple VCF instances.
We just divided it up for management domains based on workload.
Right.
We have one for APAC.
Yeah.
So it's more of a bring up, but once it's bring up, it's not bad.
Not as horrible.
This is also really cool. They're helping each other, and we don't have to do anything. It may be the Tim and Joel show, but we don't have to answer every question. We got a lot of brain power in this room. You only get one. I'm kidding.
Somebody else. Who else? Okay.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah. Then we'll get back to you.
We'll come back to you. Okay. Yeah. Well, we should have time. Joel probably answer this question quickly.
So, my question's around brownfield migrations. Also, we're smaller. We don't have that many vCenters. But what's Broadcom doing to help smaller customers determine how to do a brownfield migration? Like everybody's talking about, yeah, this is great. This is what we need to do. But there's no sessions here on like, what should your strategy be? Like, how should you do it? I feel like that's the elephant in the room. We've talked to like a half a dozen people and they feel the same way.
Yeah. But
no one's talking about that.
Yeah. And honestly, it's just because for kind of the history of VCF, you stood up a VCF instance and then you figured out what to migrate over. And a lot of times it was initially kind of proof of concept, or if I have new applications, I'm going to put them there.
Yeah.
But just because we're getting more customers doing it, we're getting a better process behind it.
Okay.
But one of the big things that's in 5.2 that I was mentioning before is that if we take a look at the tools that we had, so prior to 5.2, I essentially would have had to have this management domain, right? Start off with this. And then I would have gone in built a workload domain. And then I've got my existing data center and then figure out what to move over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with professional services, we have some partners that have been doing this from the very beginning. They were good at kind of sitting down and saying, okay, what's some things that we might want to move over first? But it's been very piecemeal like that.
Yeah.
With 5.2, because you had to really stand up this new infrastructure with 5.2, it's like if I really want somebody to do brownfield, I need a better way to uplift this. Mm-hmm. So there was ways to move this and even handle things like upgrading hardware versions and VMware tools. You know, HCX would do all that. Mm-hmm. But I really need something sort of inherent to VCF. And so that's why, again, with the support now with, say, Fiber Channel or NFS, you can really just take that existing infrastructure, move that into VCF, and you can even add NSX after the fact.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it was just a process and we needed to figure out how to do this. We had to get solid kind of with this first.
Yeah.
But it's just also educating internally ourselves about how to advise you guys about the best way to do this.
Okay.
So it's coming, and it's, you know, it's a big awareness, but having that tool now is I can really truly uplift something. Before, this was almost kind of like SneakerNet, right?
Yeah.
In the old days, it was really that kind of dislocated process to me, but we're getting better.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good
Moving
question.
in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. We're gonna try. We're gonna try to get back to you. You keep that thing in mind. All right.
Don't lose it.
What
This
can we
is
do?
following the same thread. We
Okay.
already have NSXT in place.
Mhm.
Is there a migration for the edges and everything into this VCF, or is it just?
That is a good question.
That is a good question. The NSX manager is built by the deployment. If you talk about your workload domains of SDDC, I don't necessarily know. There's not a magic pill to migrate that, because the edges are built as part of that bring up process. And VCF, and if you think, and that's a good question with NSX in general. In VCF, the role of NSX is really pretty minor, right? It's the edges. It's kind of the way in and out of your VCF environment. And now that security is an add-on, we don't even have this awareness of the security piece right out of the box. So that's a good question. I've asked that, and I don't know. I haven't even seen anything roadmapped. I don't know if anybody else that's had VCF, you got a good way to do that? There's not a good way.
Is there a migration in the migration to migrate the edges? Is there not a migration tool? Doesn't have a migrate the edges?
No,
It does not. Okay.
migrating workloads.
That.
Migrating workloads at this point.
So you get to have 2 extra edges. Correct. Yes, I don't know if everybody heard him. We got a pot the mic, please. Thank you.
So when we do this, we're not as big as these guys. Obviously, we're a university, but
Yeah.
all our production systems are in this environment,
Wow.
and trying to get downtime for this is it's going to be nuts.
Oh, it's summertime, 4th of July. Shouldn't be a problem.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But if we're going to do this, we need to. It sounds like we need to already pre-deploy and create this VCF environment and somehow add these new stuff in, or migrate all this stuff over.
It is. That is a fact.
There's no documentation on it.
Do you know when 5.2 was released?
No.
When was 5.2 released?
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
So, that's where our migration tool was introduced. And Mr. Fullstack here will be recording all kinds of how-to videos
We're gonna
in the very near future, like this coming week.
between now and March. What we're gonna do is, instead of trying to update the course, we're not gonna update the course at all. We'll have the 5.2 course. I'm gonna have a bunch of supplemental videos on all these advanced topics as they come up. So as soon as something comes up, we'll do a video on it, which will be even faster probably than the documentation, because I don't have much constraint. I record the video, we dump it out onto our learning platform. Did you guys figure out a good way to do any NSX migration? Yeah.
We left all of our brownfield.
Ah.
We did a greenfield deployment for VCF and all the new stuff.
Yeah.
Our thing was we wanted self-service compute. We have a ServiceNow front end, so we just wanted to enable that.
Right.
And the adoption rate was so fast from our customers that it consumed all the inventory that we couldn't even do
Awesome.
a brownfield
great.
migration.
Awesome.
Great.
It's good, but it's bad.
Yeah.
We're having leadership trying to do the right sizing, the right sizing, and the showbacks and the chargebacks right now. That's kind of where we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that
In
input.
short term, it becomes some additional networking, but you'll be able to clean it up after.
Go Blue. We're getting to you. Oh, no, I tried. This is Michigan.
But this is on the same topic, because I've
Okay.
heard about the VCF migrations, and I've heard import and convert. I don't know if you can speak to those terms, and these are blizzards I've heard on the floor when I was talking to one of the DCF guys. So I don't know if you are familiar with those two different methods.
To me, we use the word convert with HCX.
Yeah.
Import is now the native tool within VCF. That's what my understanding is. If I use those two words.
Okay. Yeah, HCX is really the convert. Yeah. That's really what
because you can that's where you can uplift your hardware version, VMware tools, all that kind of thing. So it's more of a convert, I would say, than an import, which the direct import tool now does that. Sure. All right.
Good.
Back to Michigan.
Thank you. Back to Michigan.
Yeah. So with the looking at standing up a management domain for the first time, it looks like there's some networks that require routing. Because my initial thought was we have blades, I could just make like a network only in the enclosure. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around like what do people typically do to have that? Because I'm just thinking like if I had vMotion traffic potentially go through one of our firewalls, that my network team might hate me. Yeah. So like what do people typically do for those internal networks?
So the routing requirement really doesn't change based off of what you have now. So it's a lot of what's the knowledge of what we have now, because you're really going to follow the same methodology. So those VLANs that define that type of traffic is still the same requirement. The only thing that is going to change a little bit when we get to networking, because internally I would need, that's the big thing too, is management. You need access, particularly when you're deploying. And this is something that has broken a lot of deployments that customers have tried to do themselves without either having access to my professional services or whatever else. You've got this appliance called Cloud Builder that does this initial stand-up. This has to have access to the management network over here that you're deploying. I have had customers say, I've tried to do this bring up 50 times and it doesn't work. They have Cloud Builder running in another site. So you have potential latency there that could blow this up, because Cloud Builder will only attempt to deploy the management domain for about 8 hours. If you can't get it done in 8 hours, it just interrupts the process. So typically, right, people aren't routing management traffic across sites. So I can't get there from here. So having that kind of awareness, I always say run Cloud Builder locally, right, because you need access to this. Also, take out any latency and any other kind of issues that will pop up that are not inherent to Cloud Builder, right? It's an appliance that deploys virtual machines, right? We've been doing that for a long time. So it's not that. It's usually something else that causes the process. And then the second thing is that these edges that we're talking about, these are going to peer with that top of rack. So whatever these VLANs are here, you need to establish those BGP relationships. So again, talk to the network team, tell them what you're doing, why you're doing this. This is my control point in and out of VCF. So that's kind of the minimum. What are your networking? And then what are your existing VLANs that are around your regular VMware traffic? You're just going to follow that same procedure. The only thing that I said it's a little bit tricky is people get really creative about where Cloud Builder is running. They'll also run it on a laptop inside of Workstation or Fusion. I don't recommend that either. It's technically supported, but how much resource does your laptop have? That could just hog up, and again, hit that 8-hour time mark, and it fails, and I have no reason why. And it's just because, again, we run. Yeah, great question.
Good question. Good question. We got 1 minute. Time for one more question if anybody's got one. It's got to be a short one. Like, how do you spell Joel?
We'll be around.
You're gonna.
We'll be around after too if you want to.
Yeah, we'll hang out outside there. This guy has a question.
You're doing the upgrades. It has a bunch of. You're doing the pre-checks, right? And they'll have a bunch of pre-checks where they're constantly failing, right? And you run the pre-checks 20 times, and then we reach out to support, and they say, well, these ones can be ignored. Mm-hmm. Is there any information on which ones are safe to ignore, or why are they even throwing those if they can be ignored? So
the pre-checks are very extensive for a reason. We're trying to prevent problems. And what has been discussed internally, the jargon that you get on the pre-check is pretty straightforward, right? It'll tell you what's wrong, but it doesn't. Some are better than others. I think what some of the discussion has been is potentially add if that is critical or not.
Critical, mandatory.
Is or whatever word we're going to use, because is the very second VCF deployment I ever did. I was trying to instantiate the host and just from scratch, right? Using my 4 nodes, I'm just trying to build a management domain. The vSAN pre-check is failing. It did not recognize the disks. These were brand new from the OEM that was asking us to install it. They were not on the HCL yet. So get into support, they're like, this is totally fine. They're just not on the list that it's aware of. So they said, bypass it and you're fine. I think we need a cheat sheet too of say, these things are mandatory, cannot be skipped. These can. It's just, again, something we're trying to work on and help with that.
And we'll give you all the credit in the world if you write that cheat sheet.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks, guys. That was great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your input. Really good. Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. Somewhat. The